to, we'll call the meeting to order. Can we get an approval of the agenda?
So, however, I would like to add an item at the end of the agenda, so that will be new item 18, and that is board member comments. We don't really have a place in our meetings for the members to make comments, bring up issues. Most other city commissions, including council, have that. So I propose adding that to the agenda as new item 18. That will be after public comment before we adjourn.
But also, I'd like to add an agenda item, discussion on city staff taking minutes for the DDA. I would note that I asked to have that on the agenda prior to the agenda published, and it was denied. So I'd like to have board action to have that added.
Okay, if that's the case, it would be then new
New
business.
business.
Pardon?
New business.
New business, that would be 16C. That would be
A discussion on city staff taking minutes for the DDA board.
And I have two items to consider. One is, since this is effectively our organizational meeting because of how we postponed last meeting, our bylaws state that at the organizational meeting, all committees should be evaluated and reappointed. So our bylaws say.
It does.
And then the other thing is, with regards to item 14 on the agenda, it discusses going into closed session to talk about two different items. Only one of those items is legal for a closed session. You can go into closed session for acquisition, but not selling a property.
Did you consult with George on this one?
I was reading it last night. It's very clear about that, and I did.
No, I was asking Caitlin, I'm
asking
sorry.
Caitlin, sorry.
Because Caitlin did talk to George about the wording of this.
He just said the transaction property. So it's okay with
any transaction.
Sale. And just the word, transactions different than sale.
So then we can take the one on the sale out and just put that under new business then?
that. Okay. There the committee, and you were appointed for the committees. Does that goes before reports?
Just raising it as an issue, I'm not suggesting where it should be, even if we need to do it today, but I'm just saying it is, because I'm not sure procedurally, we're electing a chair. Our bylaws state that the chair appoints the committees. We might be in a situation where the chair isn't prepared to do that today, but it is what our bylaws say should happen, so.
And generally, we have done it at this meeting in the past.
I put it down for discussion in new business, that way, once the new chair is appointed, they can make that decision as they want to.
I think it's a good suggestion because we'll have the reports at that time too.
All right, so that would be,
New business, D.
that would be D.
I'm sorry I'm bringing some of these up last minute. I was really just reviewing this all last night.
Then C is discussion of city staff taking minutes. D being sale of American Commerce. E would be discussion of appointing for committees.
to approve the agenda with changes. I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
Any more discussion?
Just, yeah, go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, public comment?
Good morning. As you all know, I was not reappointed to the board. And it's been 2 months and it's still weighed heavily on me, the way the entire process transpired. And I will not have any peace until I share with the board exactly how everything came out. As you all know, there were 3 positions that were open for the DDA board. 2 of them were for an at-large position, and 1 was interest. I applied under the interest position. I had been on the DDA board off and on for over 10 years, different times. I had owned 2 buildings on River Street since 1994. I was on the county board for 14 years, and I could go on and on and on ad nauseam, but I thought I was more than qualified, and I really, really, really wanted to be back on the board. So I applied under the interest category. There were 2 people applying for the at-large position. One was Julie, and the other one was Tamara. It became very apparent the evening the appointments were made that Mr. Taylor did not want me back on the board. And I will be very honest, it was hurtful the way it all came down. What he had done prior to the meeting, and I spoke with Tamara, and I didn't want to mention her name, so I'm not mentioning her name. He called one of the board members and asked her to change the category she was running under. Unbeknownst to her of the consequences of this, she agreed. So in my own humble opinion, she became a victim. She was used as a tool for Mr. Taylor to get rid of me. So Tamara was moved to the interest position, which virtually negated me. It threw me out of the money virtually. And so when the appointments were made and Mr. Taylor mentioned this, I questioned George Saylor and said, how can this be legal? Because I ran, it was validated by the city clerk, she checked off the boxes, and it's like nothing matters anymore. There are no rules that you can rely on. And I think what bothered me more than anything was the issue of trust, ethics, transparency, professional conduct. I didn't feel it that night. And I've lost elections before. It's not that this is new for me to do something. It's the way it was done. There are no checks and balances anymore on city council. You have the city manager now sitting in a position the mayor used to hold. The mayor is the one responsible for the public. The city manager is an employee. He now has the ability to appoint DDA board members. He has the ability, in essence, to get rid of all of you when your terms come up. And I just feel it's unprofessional, and I just had to share it. And sort of, I guess, clear my conscience, because I felt by not saying something publicly, it would never be, daylight would never shine. So, that's us. And I miss you all terribly, so thank you for the fun times we had, the work we did. The only other thing I would add and ask is that you seriously consider reappointing your executive board as it exists. They have worked tirelessly trying to figure out where to go, how to go forward, what to do with the director, advertise, interview. Tom bailed us out excuse me, for what, 6 months, 9 months,
6 months.
and held it together. But the board, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put into moving forward. And we have Caitlin, and she's wonderful, and it will be a good year, so thanks. That's it.
Any questions or comments?
You mean anybody else or?
Well, on what Sherry said. Any other public comment? Okay, election of officers, typically we turn it over to the executive director until a chair is elected, so we'll hand it over to Caitlin.
Do you have any nominations for the position of chair?
I would like to nominate Cal Moser.
Yes, can you hold a second? I nominate,
I'd like to recognize the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary for the additional work and leadership that they provided during the transition period without the executive director this past year. These 3 individuals should be acknowledged for their efforts to move the organization forward. To maintain continuity and direction for the new executive director, finalize approval of the TIF plan, and complete the participation and implementation of the Rising Tide prototype efforts, I move to retain the existing officers for another year.
I'll support
We have,
but
you
now we
said,
have,
you've got,
It's just a roll call now.
right,
I think we need to act on each individually.
right.
Caitlin, so you need to ask if there's any more nominations.
We have
Kyle Moser.
Kyle Mosher.
You.
Riley, would you like to accept?
No, we actually, and
was
Rachel.
just nominated by that.
Okay. Do you have any other nominations? Kyle?
We're just doing chair.
Yes.
Right.
Do you have any nominations?
I just think for the record that I know Val suggested we retain a whole slate of officers. I think someone needs to specifically nominate Rachel for that position, because you did it collectively as integral. So I think it just would lend some clarity to it, if somebody would want to make that motion.
Rachel for the position. of
I
chair.
did that already.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I missed that then.
Okay, that's fine. All right, roll call.
I have to do this a
Oh,
couple
I'm
times.
sorry.
Yeah.
I recall it, that's right.
Do you have any other nominations for the chair position? Do you have any more nominations for the chair position? One more time. Do we have any other nominations for the chair position? Kyle Mosher, would you like to accept your nomination for the chair position?
I would.
And Rachel, would you like to accept your nomination for the chair position?
Sure.
T, would you be willing to do a roll call?
Yep, so, Moser,
What am I voting for?
you or Rachel?
Oh, no, I'll vote for me.
Deponia,
Rachel.
Bergstrom,
Rachel.
Goodman,
Motion.
Lynn,
Brooks.
Taylor,
Moser.
Eftaxiadis, Rachel, Walter,
Brooks.
Brooks,
Brooks.
Brooks. So we have 1, 2, 6 for Brooks and 3 for Moser.
Are there nominations for vice chair?
I would nominate Karen Goodman.
I'll nominate Barry Lind.
I would nominate
So we have Taylor nominated Karen Goodman. Who nominated Lynn?
Valerie.
Valerie. And okay, we didn't have a third column.
Karen, you nominated Kyle, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, do you want to do the roll call team?
Are you going to ask if there are any more nominations?
Twice. Are there any more nominations? Are there any more nominations? Okay.
All right. Moser,
Motion.
DePonio, Bergstrom,
Lind.
Goodman,
Moser.
Lynn,
Moser.
Taylor,
Moser.
Eftaxiadis, Lynn, Walter,
Moser.
Brooks,
Lynn.
1, 2, 3, 4 for Lynn and 5 for Moser.
Okay, any nominations for treasurer?
I will nominate Bergstrom.
Are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate Lynn.
Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? You take it for roll call?
Moser,
Lynn.
DePonio,
Bergstrom.
Bergstrom,
Bergstrom.
Goodman,
Bergstrom.
Lynn,
Bergstrom.
Taylor,
Bergstrom.
Eftaxiadis, Bergstrom, Walter,
Bergstrom.
Brooks,
Bergstrom.
8 for Bergstrom, and 1 vote for Lynn. Okay.
Are there any nominations for secretary?
T.
Any other nominations for secretary?
Lynn.
Any other nominations for secretary? Okay, roll call team?
Moser,
Lynn.
DePonio,
T.
Bergstrom,
T.
Goodman,
Lynn.
Lynn,
And
Taylor,
Lind.
Eftaxiadis, me, Walter,
Lynn.
Brooks,
T.
1, 2, 3, 4 for Eftaxiadis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Lynn.
discussion, comments? Okay. Tom, discussion of the 10th?
Okay. Well, you probably all know somewhat where we are based on some emails that I've gone about, but I'll just go back a few months and just kind of give you a quick update on, back in late May before Caitlin started, the committee met after I met with the city manager. There was a long list of items, probably about 20 items, some small, some big, that were discussed, and the committee met and discussed all those items and made changes, sent them to John Angeli. He then sent it back to us, I think it was in late May, maybe the first week of June. We then sent that plan over to the city manager's office again, and over the next couple of weeks, the city manager and his staff went over it and narrowed that list of items down to about 6 items. And the two main issues, there were maybe 4 small issues and 2 big ones. One was the length of time for the TIF. And I think when I talked with that, there was discussion of anywhere from 5 to 20 years. He told me at that point, you're probably not going to get 30 years, because that's what John Angeli put in the plan, is a 30-year TIF. And that's what the committee had worked on, is the 30-year numbers, which was a considerable time. They spent a lot of time in that back room over 2 meetings trying to get those numbers straight. And the reference to the maintenance contract. There was lots of issues, lots of references to a maintenance contract that really doesn't exist yet. So once we received that back, I think it was about June 26th, we received those comments back from the city manager. We then tried to schedule a meeting, and in the meantime, Caitlin started. And actually, when I met with the city manager on those 6 issues, Caitlin was already here, and she met with me, with the city manager, which I think was really helpful to her. So at that point, we tried to schedule a TIF meeting, and in July, it's very difficult to schedule a meeting. So thanks to Caitlin, she tried to schedule several times, and everybody's schedule was kind of messed up. So we didn't meet until, what, a couple of weeks ago, I believe we met, and made all the changes that were requested by the city manager, except for the numbers. The numbers were then to be decided upon. And Caitlin met with T, I believe, and tried to get some of those numbers put together, and discovered there were some issues with that. I received some of the emails. I have been not as involved. I have not spent a lot of time on this. Caitlin's really carried the ball on this, and I was unable to meet last Friday with Caitlin and T. So I'm not exactly sure, other than the email that T sent, which was very detailed. That's kind of where we're at right now. And it appears as though our consultant, Rebecca Grader, has kind of said he's done. So I'm not exactly sure where we are. And I'm not sure you really need me anymore either. I think Caitlin has a good handle on this, and I'd be more than happy to provide some support to her, but I think she has a good handle on that. So that's kind of my update.
Tom, I need to let everybody know that not everybody received the email that I sent yesterday.
Oh, okay.
I only sent it to the committee, the TIF committee, but I can tell you quickly what's going on from what, because I was going to talk about it later anyway, but in the process, when we got the last TIF plan version from Began and Rader on sometime last week, they had changed the TIF valuation, or the valuation, the taxable valuation for the district, and the TIF capture to adjust it for 20 years. Caitlin and I then thought that, well, we just go through the list of projects and the priorities that we had established probably a month ago, a couple months ago, at the TIF committee level. And we'll just adjust for 20 years instead of 30-year TIF capture. What we found was there was a big discrepancy in the amount of TIF capture between the 30 years in the June version of the plan and the 20-year capture in the August version of the plan. So even adjusted for 20 years, the June plan had a lot more capture than the new version in August, substantially more. So we couldn't figure out what was going on. Eventually, I think there was an error in the tables in the TIF plan that deal with valuation, how the valuation was calculated, and of course the resulting TIF capture followed from there. I confirmed that with Megan Rader yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, and I sent you a note out. What has happened is, in calculating the starting taxable valuation in the June plan, they did not deduct the base year, the 5 million something, and they had not deducted the capture by the VRA of the South Washington VRA TIF. So we went bottom line from available capture of TIF capture of about 15 million down to 5 million. So what then that requires is, and we're going to do this after this meeting if we can, we have to go through the project plan and the assigned costs and cut it down to close to the new capture, the 5 million. So that's going to impact projects, allocations, and amounts of funds available for the projects. I communicated with everybody in the TIF committee about the meeting today. We're going to try, I don't know, Karen, if you can, after this meeting, at least to get it started. But our goal would be to get this done in the next day or two, and then bring it to the board for discussion. We may need a special meeting if we want to get this TIF plan moving, and then we have to give it to the city. So that's where we are at. Any thoughts, questions on that?
What do you think the time frame would be then?
Well, that's, we can control the timetable of the TIF committee and to some degree the board. After that, it's, the city has to take action and then council.
One of the things that I would think that you need to have pretty clear in your mind before you can give this to the city, because otherwise you're just going to waste your time, is find out from the city what they're willing to approve. I mean, you spent a lot of time on a 30-year plan, and the mayor was in that meeting, and then when I met with the city manager, he said, I don't think you're gonna get 30 years now. So we talked about five-year increments every 5 years. I mean, that's kind of what Dad mentioned to me. And then when I met with the committee, they said, well, 20 years is what maybe we can work on 20 years. Well, if you spend all this time now in that back room again, trying to figure out all those numbers again, 2, 3, 4 hours, or whatever you're gonna spend, and then you send it to the city and they say, no, we're not gonna do 20 years, then you're gonna be right back to where you are today. So I would almost suggest that a letter be sent to the city saying, what are you willing to, before we sit down and calculate all these numbers, what are you willing to accept?
I think it's important to note that we did discuss the 5-year increments. However, it was noted that a loan or any type of finances cannot be
You'd never be able to
secured on 5-year
Right.
increments. That's why we went back to the 20.
Right, you'd never be able to finance anything for any length of time.
Well, just a point that we had been talking a 20-year plan, and all the numbers were 20 years, and then we worked at it, and then the next reiteration came back at 30, and that was the point of contention, was why did we go from 20 to 30? And, so that was the city's position.
Well, the TIF committee had that question too.
Yeah.
Because we thought it was a 20-year plan, and all of a sudden we realized it was
Right.
30. When I talked to John Michelangelo, he says, that's just common that they're 30, which I don't know if that's, I don't know enough about TIF plans to know if that's the case or not. And he said, it doesn't matter how long it is, the city council can still eliminate the DDA or
Right.
TIF at any time. I would imagine they probably wouldn't be able to do that if there was a long-term financing.
I just wanted to make it clear from the city's perspective, we've been working in the assumption that it was a 20-year TIF plan. They made our comments and everything based on that, and the next document we get, it went to 30, so we were confused as to why was the change.
Yeah, and that's why the last version in last week, it was based on 20 years.
So it's not quite that clear cut. It's not like it was 20 and then it became 30 and then it became possibly 20 again. The original version, in some places in the language it said 30. The tables though said 20, so in probably more places than not it said 20 than 30. That was then noted, and then based on the recommendation of the consultant, said, okay, well then we'll make it consistent with 30. So it's not like the committee said, oh, we're gonna go from 20 to 30. It was cleaning it up. It's just, I think Tom's point though about communication amongst the parties is key, because that could have been communicated more clearly and not come across as a surprise to staff when they reviewed it.
Well, bottom line is at this point, we need to adjust the projects and the costs for what TIF we really going to have, which is substantially less than we anticipated.
Sorry, just to clarify, the 15 million versus 5 million, that was just a mistake.
It was a combination. One was because of the 30 years.
Gotcha.
Okay, but then when I went to the original 30-year plan and I recalculated what using that valuation, what the 20-year TIF would be, still it's another 34 million more than what we have now.
Okay.
So it's a combination of how the valuation was calculated, and then the TIF caps should just follow that.
Okay.
And the TIF cap, the valuation, I believe, is where in the June plan, I think that's when things that was done inappropriate.
One other thing I would like to bring up about the last TIF committee meeting is actually the discussion that we've talked about to here was actually a relatively small part of that meeting. we actually spent most of that meeting because Jeff Kula from the city was also attending that meeting, so it was kind of a joint DDA with some city staff. And we spent most of that meeting talking about the other big issue that kind of goes into this plan, and that's our relationship with the city for financial services. And I think significant progress was made in that meeting. And from my perspective, that progress, I think, is going in the right direction, but it was fundamental from my perspective because since I've been on this board now for about 10 years, it's always been the board's general consensus that these large projects we do, whether it be streetscape or Riverwalk or buying buildings, contributing to buildings, that we build them and then they become the city's property and then the city has the responsibility going forward. We kind of fundamentally changed that mindset in this meeting that it maybe should be the DDA's responsibility from a capital perspective to be paying for that asset as it ages, as it needs substantial capital improvements, and that we would be less responsible for routine day-to-day maintenance. It's almost like, in some ways, flipping the roles where we've been paying for maintenance and saying, no, city, you're responsible for what the Riverwalk when it needs, $100,000 improvements. Now, I think the next step was that Jeff Kula was going to pull some of his information together and come back to us with something. Is that, I recall that
I
correctly?
think so.
So, but that's a big piece of this because I cannot see city staff or city council approving a plan without that piece being fully in place. And I think that's where their most work is yet to be done.
The changes though in the plan now doesn't talk about a current maintenance agreement. Because I think that was one of your issues, that as you said, we're talking about a current maintenance agreement and one doesn't exist. So the plan, when I sent back those 6 items to John that were discussed at this last meeting, I mentioned, he put back, I haven't seen the new plan. Well, I guess I did see it, but I haven't read through the entire thing. But he was asked to put references to a maintenance contract that doesn't yet exist, a future maintenance contract, because this is a 20-year plan, so there could be a lot of agreements in that 20 years. So it's not talking about a current maintenance agreement, which I think the city council had a problem with, or the city staff had a problem with, and now it just refers to a future maintenance contract, or when one exists. So the plan doesn't talk about anything current right now.
The other thing in that meeting, I think that was pretty important, is that as we develop, as the DDA works, and says, hey, we want to develop this piece of property, or we want to look at this and bring this in, this has got to be a conversation with the city. Because if the DDA is gone in 5 years, it's the city's responsibility. So it would be unfair to say, let's do a $5 million project sitting on a Riverwalk, and then we're gone in 5 years, and the city has, $3 million they got to put in to finish it. So the conversations and participation with the city council is going to be very important when we come to these projects and we start to look at, what we want to improve, what we want to add on, and this all came out of the Riverwalk discussion. Well, put the Riverwalk in, it's great. Maybe that was too big a bite out of the apple if we can't really sustain that or maintain it. So that's a big piece of this whole process.
Any other questions, concerns regarding the TIP? Thanks, Tom, and T, and everybody on the committee. Hopefully within the next couple months, we see some progress and get it moving forward.
I apologize. I'll just ask. Will Tom Kaminsky continue? Because he mentioned it.
Well, I really don't want to, but I won't be getting.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Caitlin has really taken, I haven't spent a lot of time on this, and Caitlin has really taken the lead. I mean, we communicate very well together. I think you have a great executive director. I think she's going to do wonderful things here. And she has been very easy to work with, and her and I work very well together. So I'll continue to be around to kind of help out with those things.
Okay, approval of the April 10th meeting minutes.
I move approval.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Approval of the May 14th meeting minutes.
I'll make that approval.
Is there support?
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excuse me, approval of the June 12th meeting minutes.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Karen? Yeah.
All in favor? Any opposed? Approval of July 10th meeting minutes.
I move approval.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
There is one correction that is necessary. The adjournment time is incorrect on here.
The what?
The adjournment time, it was only a 12-minute meeting, not an hour and 12 minutes. So there should be 12 was the adjournment. So that was almost record short.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, approval of the June financial report. Is there any questions on the financial report?
Is that a motion?
Did you make a motion? Okay.
I'll support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Committee report, project
Um,
rec.
Was the
There's
motion for
also-
both, or was that just?
Oh, I'm
for June?
sorry.
There's also the July.
Well, you got some comments as well.
Okay. Go ahead, Greg.
Two things on July. One is on the monthly disbursements. There is the bill for taxes on the American Community property. We should not be, so I'm curious why we paid something that we know is an incorrect bill.
She's correcting it.
Okay.
We don't have a letter statement, but by the time we did it via email, she was already out of the office. So she's gonna come back this next weekend. for an
So we're gonna get a credit back on that?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And then the other is on the balance sheet. The line for facade grants. The way that account is set up is that is supposed to kind of show the available balance of what we have for facade grants. And since we're starting a new fiscal year and we've allocated $10,000, I think there should be a transfer from the general fund into facade grants fund account so that it shows that we have $15,000 available for that project.
Oh, thank you for that suggestion. I'll take care of it. Thank you.
Any other comments? All in favor? We have a motion?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought there was,
I'll make a motion.
okay.
I'll support it.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, committee reports. Rising tide?
I have some stuff for all of you, actually. As opposed to doing it in the same, I always do it, of giving you updates and things that we have been working with. I actually come today with some questions for all of you. I did some like the sheets, so you can get a visual of I'll be asking your feedback on. So as you can see in the sheet that I just passed to you, you're going to see the purpose of what I'm here today, but it's kind of giving you some background on the reason why I'm approaching the board. Most of your other meetings, I usually come to tell you the updates and where we're at with the deliverables, but in July, we have the economic development plan and also the branding project being finalized. As part of my job, is understanding what are the local organizations doing with the content proposed by each one of the consultants. After the deliverables are given to the organizations, it's my job to report back to the PRT team, MEDC, CEDA, and Greater, what are the local organizations doing with the technical assistance that we're providing. I've been having the similar conversation with the city. What do you see yourself with this? Are you looking to adopt these plans or the assistance that has been provided? To kind of provide the ultimate goal of the Rising Tide in general, so a framework to work moving forward as opposed to having different organizations doing the same thing at the same time. So as you know, Joe did the presentation in July and Barry was here from your board to kind of look at some of the things he discussed where that he recommended for the city and the DDA and the chamber to work together in. I had discussed with Rachel that I don't think that anything he suggested was too surprising or too new to the things that are already being done. But I do think that it's kind of good to have it in paper, establish, hey, this will, we'll work together on this, or the city will do that, or the DDA will do that. So I know the last conversation you guys had about economic development, you guys have decided that your subcommittee will meet and kind of, decide your way forward. The purpose of me approaching you today is because I have to report back as the DDA, following those recommendations, are you going to consider the fee for services with the chamber? Are you going to consider, Caitlin, are you going to consider another organization? Kind of knowing where you guys are at and, has this technical assistance been useful at all? Number one. And then number two, there are very specific things of this recommendation, once again, that you're already doing, that have already been done, but for example, with the stuff of marketing downtown real estate, provide developer recruitment and education to potential developers, offer trainings on customer service, share market data with downtown businesses to help focus efforts in expansion or attracting businesses. These are things that he suggests you do with the Chamber of Commerce, either fee for services or just a full-on contract with somebody else. And I just want to kind of go one by one, but at least in the economic development note, where where you guys are at, your thoughts. And the purpose or reason why I need to know is because I need to report back, because you guys have been, Rising Tide is a city initiative, but as you are also part of the city and have been actively involved, I want to know, your thoughts, where you're at, your feedback, to know where we're going. Because, and I'll use this as an example, one of the things that I had discussed with Caitlin yesterday was or Friday, the redevelopment ready processes and one contact for economic development. MEDC is moving to a new direction that communities will no longer do the property sheets, rather just do a Google form online. That Google form has one contact for each community in economic development. So it's one of those things that I kind of need to figure out. I'm 4 months from my contract, really. I should be gone in the next 3.5 months, so I'm basically starting to report back. What is everybody doing, really? So just really trying to get your feedback on this. So.
Our economic development group kind of met, and so we have some recommendations after that when our time comes up here.
Okay. How do you guys, are you planning to share them in like another meeting? Do you want to today? Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty
When
good.
it comes out under the
Okay.
next committee report.
And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was the branding. So I recently had kind of the same conversation with MEDC because, the experience in the other Rising Tide communities is that the DDAs or the ministry organizations are usually the anchors on putting the branding out there, owning it, talking with the business owners, really reproducing it overall. I had given Caitlin that if you guys had any feedback on your branding presentation, conversation to pass it on to me, but I didn't particularly hear anything from anybody. So I was just also wanting to hear your thoughts, and are you guys planning to use any of the branding content? I don't think Rising Tide expects that one organization uses everything. I think that would be kind of unrealistic, but at least having that one message out there, one slogan, if you don't want to use the image, and I don't necessarily care about that, but at least know that everybody has one brand and one vision to share. So also get your feedback if you as a board were considering to use any of the content from the brand.
I guess I would think if the city moves forward and is going to use that as their brand, it would be wise for us to follow suit.
Yeah, and I just had the similar conversation with the city this week. This is in the work section of September 10th to discuss it with city council, get any feedback, and then move to put it up to vote of city council to adopt as the official new brand and economic development plan for the city. So
There are two separate logos though, one for the city and one for the downtown.
Yeah.
And the one for the city, I don't have any issues with. The one for downtown, I didn't care for at all. I don't know what anyone else thinks about it. But I think that one definitely needs work.
Well, I was hoping that you guys all gave me your feedback about this last week, and I could bring it up to Ben's attention, but I talked to him on Friday, and he was hoping to deliver this week, and he asked me like, hey, the DA said something, and I was like, well, you were the only one that brought it up to my attention, but I didn't hear anything.
But I think none of us speak for the board.
Yeah, I know, that's
So
exactly
until we
what
have
yeah.
a meeting, we
Yeah.
can't actually say the DDA has any opinion. So this is really the first opportunity we
Okay.
have to provide any DDA feedback. And I'm not sure, and I feel uncomfortable providing personal feedback because that's not my role, so.
So what's the board's feedback? We've
Well,
got,
one comment I will add is tomorrow is the design committee meeting. And since many aspects of rolling out this will have a physical presence potentially, and that would normally fall under the design committee meeting, I was planning on having it on the design committee's agenda tomorrow. So for example, this summer we've got the 150th anniversary banners. It would be logical that next year those banners are introducing that new brand. Now, that's not in our budget, and we got to figure out those things. But I think some of those aspects should happen there. But overall logo, because that should appear on letterhead, on websites, that's not a design committee specific issue. But I do have some thoughts on design committee. I don't necessarily have thoughts as to how we should move forward from a logo and potentially tagline.
Just to make sure I point it out, I'm not hoping that you guys say, this is the logo, forever. Like, I just want to know if you guys are willing to be a lead organization into either moving a part of it, using some of it, could be the slogan, could be, whatever part that works better for the board. But know if you guys are willing to be part of the implementation once the city takes it.
I think we need to be part of it.
Okay.
Yes,
Use what we can.
I'll make a comment that he had approached me after the presentation and introduced himself and said, because the DDA wasn't really involved in the original presentation, that he didn't have the opportunity to spend a lot of time on the DDA specific logos. So if we do have interest in going along with some of the branding, to let him know that, and he can make our logos a little bit more specific. If we didn't like the DDA specific logos he had on the presentation, he made the comment he didn't have, because he didn't have our feedback beforehand, it could connect with the city logo or the familiarity presentation, that the colors, the format a little bit better if that is something we were looking at, but he would need to know that if that was your interest.
so maybe as board members, we need to send Caitlin any ideas or any pros and cons of those, of what's been put forth, and then you kind of formulate it and send it on.
He would come up with something. He wanted to know if we had comments on the specific logos, but this is, like you said, our first time getting together as a group. So if we do have interest in saying we would like to go with the city branding and kind of go with that theme, he would be willing to make more DDA similar logos as opposed to the DDA logos he had in the presentation, which
difference.
They were,
Of all
yeah,
the
very
logos that were in there,
different,
it's like, oh, this is
Yeah,
different.
it was different.
So he was coming up and explaining to me, he was trying to create this different identity because he didn't know what we had wanted. But if we do want some more familiarity, we should say something.
So
I
if
think,
we,
I think it would be worth his time and effort to try to refine what he presented and make it more on what
yeah, in
the
other,
fact is.
yeah, in other cities, he took the city logo and then the DDA looked very similar to the city logo. You could tell that there was a correlation, you know, between the two logos. I don't think that you can see that right now. So I think maybe, I'm assuming that everybody has looked at the two logos, and I would say, can we give Caitlin feedback within, you know, if we're all saying that we're going to go with the city logo and try to have something similar, then can we just give Caitlin our feedback within a week and have her take it too?
Well, and in general, I think what you're saying is probably a consensus here, is that it should be more like what ultimately the city goes with than being a very distinct identity.
Yeah.
I don't think that communicates what we're trying to accomplish.
I guess based on this discussion, I'm comfortable with Caitlin reaching out to Ben and say, you know, the board would like you to work on something more similar to the city logo and then get us something back from you.
So is the city going with that logo for sure?
We're gonna
Pat?
know in September. It's gonna be, as Ed said, she's gonna make report outs on all of these initiatives that we've had today, to find out where the city is on. So that discussion will be coming.
And I would just say, if they could do more than just one rendition, give us a couple of options, I think that would be better, so that we could then choose what we're gonna do to fit with the city, which I think is an excellent idea.
Good plan. And then the other thing.
Well, actually, can I just ask a follow-up question on that is, and I know this is too early in the process to have an answer, but let's say 2 years down the road, a different organization says, now we want to adopt. What will the process be to take the palette and all of this information and use it down the road? Either to maybe, you know, tweak, move things in a certain direction as things evolve, or because Ben's under a contract, so when he's done, he's done. But there needs to be something that picks that up that someone can go to and say, we need one now. And that there's still that consistency that can then be spread across organizations, city, and potentially countywide.
So it's funny because the Ransel had a similar question, and like Haley said, who's the owner of this stuff? So ultimately, our client is the city of Manistee. In the communities that this has been rolled out, the same way that it will be here, everybody's gonna have access to do it, to use it, to replicate it. But let's say 2 years from now, Big Fish changes and they wanna use this stuff, the process will be to go to the city and say, hey, this content that came out of this, and all of this stuff will also be available through the city.
But I hear that the county is also maybe likely to adopt this, which I think is probably different than the other communities that this has been done in, because it probably wasn't the case that the county adopted it. So I think that changes things, because I think you're going to get a lot of potentially entities outside of the city that are going to be wanting to participate.
Well, I think that's a marketing issue. I mean, that's something that they're gonna have to work with. Kind of go with the city's logo and we can add on to it, but, you know, typically you would turn that over to.
Does the city have marketing support?
Those organizations, you know, it's like, I guess you ask for permission to the city.
That's my thought.
Yeah.
But again, part of the purpose is to have consistency, and therefore the more, because you could get 5 different marketing organizations going completely different directions, and you start losing that.
At this time, you know, we're just, we're right.
Yeah, and I think.
I'm just asking what the future is and how,
I don't know what the future is. I can ask Ben how.
what the plan is. I'm just trying to understand.
Because ideally, what I've been told is like, it'll always go through the city of Manistee, and the city will say, yeah, you know, use it for your t-shirt, use it for your organization, it doesn't really matter. there. But I can ask, I don't think it's been the case with any other community, but I can ask for us to be, you know.
I think we just need to focus more on the instant, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have those issues come up in the future where more people want to get involved, and we can deal with those on a case-by-case basis.
You will own the design, and so you can.
Yeah, but I'll ask either way, just let everybody know.
I just know internally within the CBB, discussions like this are happening, and it's not clear as to
Okay.
how the CBB can really adopt and promote without understanding this answer. So I'm kind of asking
Yeah.
just a broader question that's
I'll bring it up to
probably
his
beyond the scope
attention,
of this.
you know, or to their attention in general, and see if I can get you more specifics.
So from what I'm hearing is that we want Caitlin to move forward and work with the designer and ask him to create 2 or 3 logos for the downtown that are more consistent with the city logo.
I agree with
Is-
that. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have a third point to ask, would you like me to add? His original, he had, in his 2 sets, he had one that just said DDA and another one that said historic downtown. Would be like options that had both historic and ones that just said downtown.
I would say-
Options of both.
Yes,
and we can make a
I would say
decision.
yes.
I just wanted to.
And actually, I'll point out that there was a third one in there. He had some banner ideas which were a different scheme that wasn't really the city or the DDA. But yet, if that's the recommendation of the banners, it seemed off. But so, and again, I'm thinking that from a design committee, what are our banners gonna look like next year?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Lizette, anything more?
Yeah, and then the only other thing that we had discussed this week, the housing project, it's almost finalized. I went over it with the consultant yesterday. I think she did a really, really good job. And then she has a part that she talks about the downtown housing, and I mentioned it to Caitlin, but then I told her I'll just bring it to the whole board's attention. I did know that Tyler did some work at trying to promote some of the MEDC programs when it comes to, talking to property owners and saying, hey, this grant's here, do you want to participate? But by the time Tyler was here, I don't think they had as many programs as they have right now. They really randomly, is it easy to apply? And I talked to Caitlin in order to hear the interest of the board in doing some campaign in the downtown with the property owners saying, hey, these grants are available through MEDC to, kind of promote the downtown housing. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts into, if you were okay for me to work that with Caitlin, kind of, your position on
I
that.
think it's a great initiative.
Because it's a really good recommendation. They may or may not want the money, it happens, but I feel it makes sense for us to have a proactive role and say, hey, we looked at this 3 years ago, but now there are more grants available. Here are the requirements.
Yeah, what grants are available, new grants now that were not available 3 years ago?
They're not new, but they're more funding right now. So the CDBG grants have more funding. There's this other program they talked to me about last week. I can't tell you from the top of my head. I'll have to send it to Caitlin. But before I do that, I want to make sure you guys are okay for me to say, hey, these are all of them. Let's put them out there. Or here are the requirements. Here's a pro forma, whatever, guide. But I wanted to know that you guys are okay before I go ahead and give it to
Well, to my knowledge, the grants have not changed, the requirements have not changed, and the administrative burden has not changed. There is more funding, you're correct.
I don't.
But the issue still is that those are not user-friendly grants because they're for small projects, but designed for large projects.
I was just interject, it's my understanding when Tyler was trying to get some traction on downtown housing, the only thing available was the Michigan program. And since then, MEDC has rolled out their rental rehab that is better funded and not as restrictive for applications. So there is a new, for lack of better terms, project out there that we can offer to the downtown.
Yeah, the program is the same, the amount of funding has increased.
But I think for Lizette to work with
Yeah.
Caitlin, just to get the word out to property owners, I don't see any issue with that. That's my opinion.
I would agree. I think as a property owner, Caitlin needs to somebody's coming and she needs to be aware.
And they may or may not want it. It may happen that, she brings it up and they say, I don't want this.
Right.
But with the whole rising tide designation, also Manistee is supposed to be easier and faster to get funding for these type of projects. So that's why, it's kind of a no-brainer to go at it, but I didn't want to just bring it to her without knowing whether or not you guys
So
thought
does-
this was important.
Does the board agree for Lizette to work with?
I agree, but in some ways, this, I think, gets into a conversation that we're likely to have later when the Economic Development Committee, because we talked about this exact same issue yesterday. And in that conversation, we had the idea, and it's not even a recommendation, but it's an idea that maybe this would be the type of project that we could engage with the chamber to do in a fee-for-service basis, so that we're not overwhelming our director with a big project on top of other big projects. And I think this is something that could be well-defined such that we could engage with the chamber to accomplish some of those other goals. Having said that, and sorry Karen, I might be saying too many things that you're going to want to talk about later, is we also talked about a lot of making sure that our director is overseeing all of these initiatives, even if they are subcontracted out. So yes, I think she should be involved, but I think the details of how we might want to actually staff and resource that might be different.
And I'm
So,
fine with that.
no, sorry, I just want to get that out there because I don't want us all to think of one
I
thing.
think some of your
and
answers
then-
will be, or some of the answers to your questions will be answered in Karen's report under economic
But
development.
overall, I just wanted to bring it up, it's important, it's good to advertise it, whether it's me, it's her, but it's important to be proactive.
I think
about
I
it.
hear the board supporting that
That we push it out
Yeah.
in some fashion,
Yeah.
whether it's through the executive director, whether it's through a fee for services by
Right.
the chamber. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring those opportunities.
It makes an
to
overall
property.
vision of being able to utilize our downtown, not only for shops and stuff, but to be a beautiful, walkable, residential area as well.
And maybe I'm beating a dead horse here.
I think you are.
I know. Again, I think it's good to get information out there, but we cannot underestimate the amount of resources a project like this to be effective will take. You just can't give people information and then expect them to walk with it.
Oh,
At
no,
least in our
especially
past
without the
experience,
plan.
you've got to handhold them, and that takes time, energy, resources.
And the details will leave to Kate.
Well, I was gonna suggest that is that, we just need to tell Caitlin, we're interested, hopefully he's gonna research it and bring back some recommendations to the board. And I think that's the way we need to approach this, not only on this initiative, but others going forward, is she's a talented young lady and just give her some general directions and she's gonna come back with some recommendations on how to we implement. I think it's a good recommendation, is just give it to her and let her come back.
And then I will be out of your hair with this last one. I spoke to Tim Leonard last week about that facade grant and that $100,000 I asked for support continuing Tyler's work. They said, originally he said he encouraged the board to attend the Michigan Strategic Fund meeting this month. I checked with him yesterday and he's like, oh, hey, are you okay if I tell the DDA board? And he said the meeting for August got canceled and will most likely we will encourage their presence in the September board, but I'll give you guys a shout out to know. I don't have the final decision. I guess that'll be publicly said out there. I hope that they're not asking a person from the DDA to come and say, no, you're not getting the money. But,
So the August 27th
Yeah, it
meeting
got
has been
canceled.
canceled,
Yeah.
so
It's
take that up.
So I'll get back to you guys.
It's
once
not
it's
been
off me.
rescheduled.
There's one in September,
It
there's
is
one every
September.
month.
Do you know
So
the date on that one?
we're connected today, so I'll
Okay.
just let you guys know. The dates are public, but I guess this one was canceled, so I guess they'll just let me know better.
Okay, if you can let Caitlin know the date and time,
No problem.
because
Okay, sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Lizette, I have one more comment. This is something I should
Oh,
have
I have one more comment too.
That should be something I should have gotten to you sooner, but in the recommendations, the text around facade grants talks about the DDA offering more but smaller amounts. In the boilerplate, in the discussion, it talks about the exact opposite, fewer but larger amounts. And I'm not sure which one it is, because I think we already offer only very small,
I agree.
and the recommendation, I think, is meant to say
To
something
be larger,
different.
yeah.
So,
And I think it is because we talked about, you know, how Tyler had already submitted that, you know, to get more
Right.
funding, so
And-
it
and
would
I
make
just- I
sense
just
to
think
go
that's a-
larger. And, yeah.
it's a discrepancy, and
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we know what Joe intended.
I'm
so
pretty
that we
sure it was
can-
the larger one, but I could get to him too.
It just-
Yeah.
Thanks.
Because he also talks about impactful repairs, and
Exactly.
impactful repairs is gonna require more funding, so
Yes.
that's probably one of the ones. And then the other one last thing, and this is gonna come up in September too, but we're meeting in the steering committee to discuss the whole subject of the Manistee forward, to kind of have a place to have conversations along all the organizations in the community about, you know, operations, where you guys are at, to have one specific space for conversation as opposed to having to hear from an email or a third person. Barry's gonna be your voice about that, to get, you know, your thoughts from the board, but just a heads up that that's gonna come.
When,
My next steering committee meeting is, I think, the same day of the council meeting. It's September 10th, if I'm not mistaken. So after that, you guys will hear some more details about that.
And is Manistee Forward and Joe's recommendations
We'll talk about
becoming
that.
the same?
We'll
or-
talk about
Okay, so, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Design, very.
Oh, design. I'm not sure why the design minutes didn't end up in the board packet, but they are done. So I'm just pulling them up now. The last meeting, I was only able to attend for the first half hour, and then Kyle took over the meeting. So I may actually defer to him or Caitlin, who were there for the whole meeting on some of these items. But the main thing that we talked about while I was there was the parking signage for the district. We now have a signage map and plan, and basically we recommended that Jeff Kula move forward, procure those signs per that plan, and as soon as it's possible for that to actually come to fruition, finalize that. And we've now done this summer spring and summer, 2 walkthroughs with DPW, and DPW they're really trying to do a good job. They've made progress between our spring meeting and our summer meeting, and they've made progress since our summer. I don't think we as a committee still feel they're where we want them to be, but I feel for Jeff. I think some of it is a training issue, and it's just the resources he has. They're not landscapers. They're not approaching this from, wow, how can we make this look amazing and beautiful, and that that's just, a lot of them are just summer employees. So there's training issues. But having said that, both Jeff and Nikki have been wonderful to work with, very receptive to our suggestions and ideas, and I think we have a good working relationship there, and I'm seeing progress.
I would, again, I recommend this a lot, but reach out to our local gardening clubs and see if they would be willing to help out, maybe, you know, give ideas of what should be pulled, not pulled. There's a great resource out there.
As it relates to the 5 specific planter areas on the Riverwalk, we do have a mini little program of groups adopting them, and so some of that is happening. But I do understand what you're saying in the broader perspective, and I think that is something that we do need to investigate more.
Can I ask about the, just quickly about the parking, you were talking about the
Yep.
signage,
Mhm.
is in keeping with this branding and so forth, might that parking kind of align with that, or no? Just gonna be a clean parking?
The goal was to go the opposite direction. Just standard parking, very recognizable, you're not gonna miss them because they're overly ornate or designed in some different way. So the intention is to be very effective and efficient parking signs, not to participate in brand.
I'm only going to make one other comment because of the comment that was made at one of the city council meetings that I was at, that during one of our major festivals, the Riverwalk wasn't in very good repair. And so I guess I'd also look at, are there ways that we can involve the community so that when we're having major festivals, especially, that we do a walkthrough of some improvements so that our community looks the best we possibly can.
Well, our walkthrough was a week before intentionally to
Yeah.
catch things, and things were improved. So, yes.
Barry,
Thank you, Barry.
Go ahead, yeah.
who owns the Glicks building now? Does the community college yet? Or-
I don't know the status of that,
So-
and as far as I know, actually, I think DPW has gone into that property to do some of the major, the noxious weed, under the noxious weed
Yes.
ordinance, and basically gone, because it was really, and I don't think that got done before, Forest Festival, but it has since then. I think because that property is in transition, it's hard to pin down responsible parties that are, you know.
So it's not owned by the
It is
community
open.
college?
There's a hand in the back of the audience that might
Yes,
be able to
sir.
enlighten us.
It is owned by the college, and they are now aware that of the landscaping needs, so they have hired people from the college that come and take care of it.
Perfect.
Is there a horticultural outside college?
Yeah.
You have the whole Riverwalk.
Any other comments, questions for design?
Another topic that has come up, and it's been raised by a new merchant downtown, basically the new game shop. Their clientele tends to be younger and tends to ride bikes. And they've raised this to me a couple of times, they've mentioned it at the merchants committee meeting. We've started talking about it at design. Caitlin's been doing some legwork on trying to understand what the existing framework within the city, what role the non-motorized committee plays in this, looking at what's available. It sounds like the non-motorized committees, they're the ones that are tasked with assigning bike rack locations. So we're trying to figure that out to basically meet the needs of this business, but doing it in a way that's not necessarily specific to one business, because the Vogue has had the same issue over time as how this works. So this is a project that we're looking at, and Caitlin's, really doing a lot of good legwork on this. Thank you.
Is there an ordinance that people can't ride their bikes on the sidewalk? Because I
I
thought,
think that is the case.
I thought there
but
was.
It's just a bridge.
You gotta walk your across there, but you're not supposed to ride on the sidewalk, you're supposed to be in the street.
So that might be something to take into consideration too, because more and more people are riding their bikes downtown and on the sidewalks, and it might be something to continue to talk about. And
So I don't think there's any signage on River Street about
That's
not
a,
riding
that's
your
a,
bike.
that's a citywide
Yeah.
sidewalk.
I only see them on the bridge.
Yep, sidewalks are reserved pedestrians. There are no shoes on the street.
They should be on the street with all those golf carts.
This is good. I will slow down traffic on River Street, which is
It
what we
will.
want.
It will. All of those wrong way.
Oh, that's okay.
Barry, do you have any more?
I do not have anything else.
Any questions for Barry? Okay, marketing and promotions, does anyone want to chair this committee since we are working on logos now?
Sure. If you want a second. You get to sign. You get to sign.
So Karen will oversee the marketing and promotions committee. Does anyone want to be committee members?
I have to live with what I decide.
I'll work on that.
See, I know.
So am I.
Okay. Ed and Valerie, be committee members of the marketing and promotions. Any other concerns, questions? Okay, moving on, business development, Valerie.
Business development is working on two key areas. One's spark, and the other is retention. And our committee members are working on both very diligently. We did recently talk to another potential sponsor. So we're hoping to get some of those things finalized in the next month, and things are going very well. And does anyone have any questions?
Another very big property in Detroit.
Oh, yes. Those are other, traditionally, in the past, what we have done is we've talked about open properties for sale. And we need to resolve how we have those discussions and how we track them as part of our meeting tomorrow. Because it's very nice, it fits with Spark. We get Spark people going, where can they rent, what's available. And our last executive director did a nice job of making sure that all the finalists saw all those properties prior to the event. So we're going to try to do the same thing. Other questions or comments?
Okay, redevelopment, T.
I have no report, and there have not been any meetings recently. I recommend that this committee be eliminated, and what we used to do be rolled into the Economic Development Committee. In the past, there was always a problem with having members that would actually do the work. And for things like promoting the rental rehab program, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of nitty-gritty work, and we didn't have members that would do that. Barry, myself, and of course Tyler at the time ended up doing a lot of the work. So I think that at this point, I recommend that we eliminate the committee.
Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Support it.
And with intent to roll those into economic development.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving forward, economic development, Karen?
Our committee met, and I forwarded a little statement yesterday, so I'm just going to kind of read that.
And I read it on the way here.
Okay.
While I was eating breakfast, and I went, it's fine.
Okay, all right. I think it was, 1 o'clock at night. After review and discussion with the Chamber and Filer Township DDA, we believe both groups could be of benefit to the DDA in helping Manistee downtown development with helping economic development. The Chamber is moving toward large economic development projects, and Filer DDA working towards small business development. The committee would suggest that the DDA director manage and provide oversight of all economic development projects, engaging and contracting with the Chamber or Filer DDA to provide economic development projects within the district. Furthermore, one immediate project recommended is to work with the Chamber in the development and/or development plan of US 31 and River Street intersection. The other things that, just based on what Lisette has offered here, I mean, I kind of went through it. We talked about all of these items, and I see about 4 or 5 items Caitlin can take on because we feel strongly, or feel that she has a strong ability to manage these type of things and has an ability to have oversight over all economic development for us. Looking at this too, I see the Chamber, having 2 or 3 of these, and I see possibly Filer Township having a couple too. So I think that being able to take the finances that we have and have Caitlin and engage in contract services to get, such as an example here, target vacant unused upper floors of downtown building for housing. Chamber has a need for housing development themselves, since they're doing the larger economic development. So that might be a collaborative effort in which you could get somebody in to do some research, you could work with their economic development person to kind of do, I don't know what that would include, but, I think that might be a good project that you would say, we will engage in a contract for this service. A couple others that I had in there was training, the market data. I mean, there's some great stuff in here that you can reach out and ask each group to do.
So are you suggesting that when something comes up, she'll bring it to the board and then negotiate a contract with either one of those organizations?
I would suggest that the board give her the ability to contract independently up to, like with the state, we do up to $10,000. So she doesn't have to stop and wait every 30, 60 days to get us to approve. So give her an amount, anything over that amount, you would ask for board approval, or at least executive.
I'm sorry.
I was going to just take that one step further. If the board could maybe identify some of these initiatives that Rising Tide Consultant has outlined, maybe we could just ask Caitlin to figure out who's the best partner and come back with some kind of a plan and recommendation on how we can implement that by partnering with the chamber and finally DDA. I think that's a good first step. I'm a little reluctant to say enter into a contract to a certain amount, and that would be better. I think it's better suited if you could bring us back a plan and your recommendations, and then we can work out to help you with the details of the contract in terms of where we're comfortable with the dollar amounts.
One more thing. The thing that we found and we kept coming back to in meeting with the two groups, in our work we talked about macro and micro, and the DDA came in, for Filer Township came in with a real strong focus, a little bit surprisingly, on just small business development. And so there was a lot of effort that they were putting in just that piece. They have a plan that actually, we could scarf off of, for some sort of plan development, and they really identify that needs areas and stuff like that. So that plan is kind of a great roadmap for micro businesses, but also for that macro economic development in which we would really look to the chamber to be able to provide. And I'm talking large developments, if you had somebody coming in, putting a major hotel in our downtown or anywhere near our downtown, I think those are things that we need to be involved in, or, I don't know, any other major area in which, let's say they do a plan for major development for all the residentials down in downtown. That would be great because they also need that economic development. Right now, I'm trying to find an apartment for somebody I'm bringing in, and it's just very difficult.
Karen, do you have a copy of the committee's recommendations
So I am sending it to you right now.
Okay, so
I think I would agree with that it would be nice for Caitlin to come back with a specific recommendation.
And she already knows that the board is supporting the topic with, that Lizette mentioned of targeting building owners and proposing the grants to them, so that would be a start. And then we can look at these other initiatives and go from there.
I guess if we're going to give her direction, I would just suggest that she take what Lizette provided us today. Anytime DDA shows up, give us a recommendation on how we can be a partner with that and implement it.
Any questions, comments for Karen?
I just want to make I was just want to make sure Caitlin has a good understanding of what the board's interest is.
I'm gonna go through this chart, and where it says DDA as a lead party, I'm gonna text with my partners, and or if we're a lead party or if we're a partner, I'm gonna meet with our other parties or our other entities and see how that relationship is gonna be identified and come back here with recommendations.
How would you implement that on a fee-for-service basis or kind of?
Just a little bit uncomfortable, because I think many of those things are things that we could and should do internally. We don't need a partner, of course, many of them. I just look at a lot of the things that's in Valerie's committee, because everything that's on that list are things we as an organization have been doing over the years. So it was actually surprising seeing that list. It's like, well, we've been doing it. Whether we've been effective or not, that's a whole other question.
That's where
Yes.
Caitlin's gonna come in, and you're gonna go through it, and you're gonna see what your time and your ability allows, and then you can kind of give us a recommendation for where you need to help.
Yeah.
Would the board be okay with her working with the executive team on those, on this, and then bringing suggestions back to the board?
I think, I would love to see her do that independently and
Yeah.
then bring it back to the board.
You know, and again, you know, I'm just, there's some examples like the facade grants, there's no identified partners. She's gonna come back and whatever she wants to tell us, but there's others that, you know, I think we need to let her flesh that out.
Yeah. This is.
And provide a recommendation.
Training us.
I come back to my point is she's very talented and weighty, and we need to let her use those talents.
Any questions?
And of course, she can always use her resources, she could always ask questions of the executive, she could come back to the Economic Development Committee if she had questions. She'll handle it well, I have confidence in her too.
So I know Jeff wants to say something. I'm not sure if he has to wait till public comment. I don't have any issues with him saying anything if the rest of the board doesn't.
Well, it's germane to the topic, and I'm the sitting chair of the Economic Development Board that's been newly formed. We have 4 board members in the room, and I just want to clarify, we're not just looking for big projects, we're looking for any project. We're looking for anything to increase tourism. If we can assist in trail development, that's going to bring more people to the area, it's going to put more people through the DDA district as well as the out-county communities. We're not looking just for a 20 employment opportunity. We're looking for all opportunities. So it's a broad perspective. We're going to try to help shepherd everybody through the process of coming through and open doors as opposed to closing doors. And what I would also emphasize is what's good for outside of the DDA district is good for the DDA district. So we need to think more globally.
Who's on your board, Jeff?
Well, we've got Thad, we've got Tom St. Dennis, we've got Stacy, myself, Jim Reithel, we've got Scott Ward, James Barker, Sarah Anderson,
Dennis McCarthy?
Dennis McCarthy. I think that covers it.
I'll react to that, and I've voiced this in the past. I don't think you have enough small business representation in that group. But I also understand how that group has come together, and I understand. And I think that's part of what you're hearing here is a reaction to how we're seeing your organization develop. And
Well,
seeing-
Sarah Anderson is a small business. That's Iron Fish, and that's out county. So you get into the questions of concern, well, who's representing out county? Well, we've got a couple, I'm just saying.
I think that you need to hear, Jeff, that we're very interested in having Caitlin, promote and or drive our organization's collaborative efforts with these other organizations. And I'm gonna get into my personal biases that I keep coming up with in this group, is that there is not enough cooperation that occurs between several of our large, important organizations that run this community. And we are at fault just like everybody else. So I am hoping that in this route, looking at this economic development approach, that we give Caitlin the ability to use her talents and to collaborate and work with other organizations for the betterment of everybody. We, as a county commissioner, we've got a lot of money sitting in here too, and I'm interested in the best of the downtown so that county benefits. I totally agree, you know, we are on the same page. But also too, as a DDA board member, I've got to make sure that we keep her out front and being able to kind of voice our interest in the downtown district and improvements. I mean, there is so much there's just so much to do. I just don't think you can do. I mean, you just drive through Manistee, downtown, and you go down Washington Street. There's so much to do, and I think that you need to have the ability to go out and get help from the chamber or the DDA or the filer if they have a project that I know that they've got some things that they've been out doing that we could really use that information and collaborate with them. And then with the chamber, they're bringing on somebody who has a lot of contacts, a lot of information, and so that's our resource. So we need to be working with them too, and we'll have to buy these services, and I think that's a good route to go.
And we will foster that relationship with Caitlin, there's no question. So she's new to the area, and we will definitely embrace and grow that relationship.
We appreciate that support.
Any other questions, comments for economic development?
So that recommendation is going forward, approved?
I don't know if there needed to be a motion made where when Caitlin comes back with things from the list in her plan, that's when I would think that motions need to be made, but if you.
No, that's all right. I'm kind of not sure if that this, we'll just keep the economic development group. That's when we add on, and I don't know if it needs to stay.
That's why I was saying that maybe this committee could continue to be a resource for her as she's developing the plan. I think that might be effective. And, but we might also want to say, would that be by the next meeting? Because that might be helpful. Or we need to give her some direction about when we want to see that plan. And maybe you can say, is 30 days enough, or do you need additional time?
I would say let her think about it and she can come back to us.
Okay.
Because this is the first time all of us have seen this. And I know it would take some time to probably, really think about it.
This term actually limits. And so important.
It is.
So, I know that I
Just gonna ask him what he wants.
should go about it.
That's pretty much all I'm gonna do.
Everyone comfortable with?
That's all I'm gonna do.
Yes.
With that?
Yeah, the rest of it's.
Do we need a TIF report since, no? Okay, director's report.
I'll try to make it quick. I just highlighted some key points from the actual report by itself, but if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to reach out. We do now have official biological schools, so I just wanted to bring up congratulations. We did it. I will be presenting at the city council meeting on September 17th. I'm going to begin doing biannual reports. We're typically we do in January. It looks like I might be in March and September of every year, just updating them on the projects that we're working on and posted. So my next one will be that mid-September meeting. I didn't spend as much time on the PA 57, but that's because I'm waiting for some financial information. And for the most part, when I talk to the treasurer from the state Travis, I'm being more dramatic than he is. He's not as concerned. We've got a lot of information put together already. We're more than ahead on timeline. So he said, wait till that financial stuff comes in. We're more than on track. For Spark, we sent out thank you letters to our sponsors that have reached out back. We're going to target some specific sponsors left, and I reached out to a couple of other pitch competitions in Northern Michigan to see how they reached other sponsors, and that's for sponsorship services, for sponsorships for the event, and they gave me some great ideas. So we're going to continue to reach out. I did meet with Ramsdale Theater, and they have said, yes, you're more than welcome to come back and do the event. So our event is going to be January 25th, it's Saturday. It's from 11 to 1, and details are finally coming into place. We are going to do 1 year later video. I think we might want to do 1 or 2 of them with Jeannie, our winner from last year, for the purpose of showcasing what Spark was able to do, her pride in being in Manistee, and she's been super helpful in giving us feedback on last year's event, and she's been very invested and interested in communication with something with your event, so I kind of kidnapped her as my own American Idol co-function and then we started doing this for my upcoming years. For American Cleaners, we had spent quite a bit of time re-updating our performance, talking with Dan from NBC. And then we realized, and we'll be talking about it later on our agenda, that there's another opportunity for that site. So that conversation will continue. For the design committee, I did meet with Jeff Kula, and we are working on the RFPs for our Riverwalk improvements and maintenance, our Riverwalk and city responsibilities. We talked about where our property lines are and who's responsible for the properties that are up to the Riverwalk. And I'm just super appreciative of your walkthrough with me. I've called it my adhesive conversation where we talked about what we're going to do with our capital improvements plan. So I'm meeting with Laura from the Community Foundation. She's going to be engaged in our design committee to help us with some of the funding opportunities that we want to do for this 2019 to 2020 capital improvements plan goal. For Project Rising Tide, as Lizette said, I was able to attend both the economic development presentation and the branding presentation. And I have reached out to Joe and talked to him one-on-one about the plan and its involvement. And he was very helpful. And we're hoping that our team forward or our team Manistee from that plan can start meeting soon. For our business development, as Valerie said, we're working really hard on figuring out this retention plan / process. And I've had a couple other DDAs that specifically work on retention look at our website and even kind of some feedback, and that was incredibly helpful. So I'm learning how to do a website. So if you see things in the near future moving around, please feel free to shoot them to me because I get so indulged into it. I'm noticing details later and I've got to work on that. So it's not going to come out to it and take a personal sense of it that way. So that retention plan and those surveys it's been a great development process, and it's also helped me really learn about my partners in the area and get very involved with some of the resources in the area. So it's been actually really good work practice for me.
So this report is the goals that we gave Caitlin, and since we're in Rising Tide is already on here, so do we want to just keep Rising Tide and what she's going to do with this list, or do we want to add this project as something separate? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you want it under redevelopment, or do you want to just keep it under Rising Tide?
I think we can go under Rising
Okay.
Tide until we have something real specific.
Okay,
Yeah,
sounds
okay,
good.
that's all we can.
I'd agree with that.
Any questions for Caitlin? Thank you, Caitlin. I think it was great work.
Actually, I do have one question. Since Hops and Props is an event that we are considering our event, will happen before we meet next. My concern is, are you going to get sucked in for a lot of work on that? I'm hoping not, because that has been the goal of this board for the last 2 years to make that happen.
Yeah.
But I just, because I just want to make sure that you know that we as a board, I'm maybe speaking out of turn here, believe that that is not one of your priorities Although I also think that you could step in to prevent an event from falling apart and looking poorly upon us as well. But let us know as a board if you have issues or concerns that are preventing you from doing the things on this list.
I have the same concern because there is a Hops and Props committee member that is resigning from their responsibilities. I'm not sure if Gary, who oversees Hops and Props, is aware of that as of yet, but I did email her yesterday. And I don't know who else is on that committee. And again, I totally agree with you that Caitlin can't get sucked into the event.
No one has reached out to me. My only involvement so far has been pay authorization to pay deposits for the event.
And as far as sleigh bell, that's all I've asked Caitlin to do so far, is just help with the county. Any questions or comments? Okay, the next section, I don't recall from the beginning of the meeting, if we are going into closed session right now, or the topic that we took out, we can talk about it now, because
I mean, I think we should delay the closed session to be the last item, because we do have audience members,
That's
and that
what I
doesn't make
was-
sense.
that's what I wanted to address. They've been patiently waiting for us,
Right.
so. So just,
So we're going to go to item 16D.
I think that we should.
Okay.
Is everyone okay with that?
I didn't write down, what is that?
Why don't we just take, I was gonna say, why don't we just take them in order? It's already, if we just go into new business and take care of it.
Do all of them and
Yeah.
then, sure.
Bounce around too much.
Do start with
Can we
16.
start with, so you're suggesting we're starting with 16A?
That's what-
Okay. So approval of the purchase of QuickBooks access for the access to files and printing of financial reports. Is there a motion?
I move.
A second.
Any discussion?
Is there a dollar amount?
Yeah.
It's $5 a month.
Yeah.
If we do it before September.
Okay.
Typically, it's $10 a month.
Does Caitlin not have the ability to spend $5 a month? Do we have to vote on that?
I don't think that we do.
No,
I don't either. It's definitely the right thing to do.
All right.
Since there is a motion and there's a second, is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Approval of the hiring of an attorney. There has been discussion since we have two items on our agenda that one is transactions. That we have an attorney that we can ask questions to, and help with any concern or issue that we may have.
Why are we using the city attorney? Why aren't we?
I think we are.
Is it a conflict?
For
I-
some items,
For
yeah.
some items, we do believe it's a conflict or
What items?
purchases and transactions.
I see where you're coming from.
I guess I'm not, I don't understand it, because it doesn't work the city, and he is part of the city, and he routinely gets involved in transactions for the city.
If the city and the DDA disagree, maybe on a transaction, and we are each asking for
Legal advice.
you know, that might be, but if we do things in the way in which we go to the city, you know, discuss and talk about things first, that would lessen those conflicts. But if a conflict does arise, we do have the right to go out and face it.
I think the maintenance agreement, for example, that's an example of an item that, because the agreement is between the DDA and the city, that's it's an example of an item that we need to have someone, a third party.
I think we use that as needed basis. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you're right, but I think that we should have somebody in mind and talk to them, so we're not scrambling when we need that opinion or advice and working on finding someone for 3 months.
Because the issue is going to be procurement. It has to be an open procurement process.
Have we asked the city attorney if he'd use it as a conflict of interest? I think that would be my suggestion, is this a conflict of interest? I'd like to have his opinion.
We do have to have that on the books, you know, that we have approached it and asked if it's conflict of interest first. We should have that recorded. That's true.
So I would suggest that before we even discuss this, provide him with some concerns that someone has about conflict of interest and have him weigh in on it.
So if he says it is, you know, he doesn't feel it's a conflict of interest, and this board has a discussion on that, then this board can move forward to say whatever we're saying. And that way it all lines up instead of just jumping to a sentence.
Okay, so just one last question. Do we want to look at anybody else right now? So again, we're not scrambling at the last minute if George does say, yes, there is a conflict. Because if he says there's a conflict, then we have to find an attorney, come back to the board for board approval. That could be a 2 or 3 month process, which could hold up some of the projects that we are going to be
But we're not hearing
discussing.
anybody on retainer.
Here's my,
No,
All right.
but someone should be, I think that we should have somebody in mind, identified and approved, yeah.
But still, we're going to have to advertise and write the RFP of sorts, and
I guess, again, I'm
Take some
comfortable
time.
if we approach George, if he believes, based on scenarios we present to him, that it could be a conflict of interest, and if you're worried about, you know, the maintenance agreement or sale of property or acquisition or whatever, make those specific requests to him. And if he thinks any of those are going to be a conflict of interest, then I think we just direct Caitlin to put together a request for proposals that she could get out and then bring them back to the next board meeting.
we can do that, and we should put together a list of items and potential needs for legal counsel, provide them to George and say, here's some. Would you have conflict for any of these?
Can we discuss those right now and just have Caitlin reach out to George and find out?
I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
I think we should, all of us have any ideas, send them to Caitlin.
I feel so concerned that there's something brewing that I don't know.
Exactly. And, see, because I don't understand it. And, you know, I guess the maintenance agreement maybe, but beyond that, I don't know of anything. And if there's something that the board doesn't know about, how are we going to evaluate the need?
Issues related to bylaws that involve the city
requested change.
requested, yeah, that's the things that we dealt with the last few months. We're operating on our own.
Well, I think as a city organization, we certainly can use the city attorney to render opinions on city operations.
But we are not a city department, we're an authority that's supposed to have some independence in certain, we are appointed by council, but we're not a city department. And we do not sometimes have the knowledge, the expertise on what is legal, what's appropriate.
That's why we have a city attorney that we can access.
But the city attorney is the city attorney.
Right, and this is a part of the city. I guess I'm almost hearing some people question his integrity.
Oh, it has nothing to do, I know
That's what I'm
George
hearing.
very well, and personally, I don't know what everybody else feels. I'm not questioning his integrity. I'm concerned about the fact that George represents the city and the council, and when there are issues that we are uncertain about what's the legal basis for, then George may or may not have conflict. That's why I'm suggesting now, let's prepare a list of what it is that, what are the issues that we consider, whether contracts, transactions, bylaws.
If you want to do that, let's start compiling the list. We got the maintenance agreement and
Change of bylaws.
change of bylaws.
Change of bylaws,
But
advice.
this board changed our bylaws.
Exactly.
Remember?
Pardon?
This board changed the bylaws.
We have that authority to do it.
That's correct. And we did it without legal counsel.
So, well, you're getting into an area of saying that you felt the board didn't make the right choice. So you as a board member want to.
I didn't say that, I voted for the changes.
So why is it a
But
concern?
without legal counsel.
I think we're getting into the weeds, way into the weeds. What,
I
okay, so.
think that maybe we should talk about this either at the next meeting or after what we're going to talk about next.
Yes, that might be
That's,
I think people have to chew on this for a while.
Yeah.
to
Yes.
talk about it.
Exactly, someone's got to convince me of the need.
so let's table this if everyone's okay with it.
Okay,
We'll
table
bring
it.
it back again,
If you're going to table, we got to table it to a date certain.
or
Resolve.
we can just continue to talk about this at the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
And then after the next two items on the agenda, some that may come back up. Okay, so what did we just see?
Discussion city staff taking minutes.
Yeah, I'm sitting at the table now, I realize it's got to be extremely difficult. I'm going to use T as an example, as well as secretary, to be an effective board member engaging in discussions and also taking minutes and taking a roll and things like that. What I'm offering is that our city staff take minutes for the board, and that way it takes that responsibility off the secretary, and the secretary can be a fully engaged member during the meetings.
I disagree.
And
Has anybody had problems with any of the minutes? Or any of the meetings?
Well,
So far.
we're 4
Pardon?
months behind on meeting minutes.
The timeliness is an issue. Now that there are some new regulations that require that these be posted and, you know, all of the stuff that comes with that new.
Okay,
Actually, they're
So-
not new regulations, though. The meeting
These are
act
regulations.
says
Okay.
they should be posted to the general public
Well-
within a certain number of days.
that's fine. I can agree with that. But not for the reason that Thad is bringing up. He's bringing up that there is a potential conflict here. And I think that there is a potential conflict with a member's secretary, Thad's secretary, taking notes.
Oh, who said it was my secretary?
Who's it?
We're going to rotate it among staff.
Okay,
so the
you
only,
didn't say that.
the only reason why
I
I
said
didn't,
city staff.
the only reason why I didn't include it on the agenda is because I thought we would leave it up to the secretary to make the decision if they would like to do meeting minutes or not. I mean, it's a volunteer position, it's volunteer time, and if the secretary wants to continue to do the meeting minutes, I don't know why we would pay someone to come in here and
First,
do them.
okay.
So that's the only reason why it wasn't on the agenda. I think that we should leave it up to the secretary.
Well,
If the secretary doesn't want to take meeting minutes, then.
There we go.
But-
That
Matter of fact-
role of the secretary, I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Yes, it is.
And isn't that the role of what the person does?
Yes.
So Barry, I will turn this to you right now.
Not always.
Not always. I've served on a number of
Some
boards
groups, the
where-
secretary oversees the
Yeah.
minutes and approves
Separate
them.
recording
Right,
secretary.
Yeah.
yes.
You know, I've never been part of an organization where the
Yeah.
secretary doesn't.
Government's big.
Yeah, it exists.
Okay.
Two things, just a couple comments I want to make is that, you know, I take exception, as I noted earlier in the meeting, that this was my request to have this on the agenda was not granted. Our bylaw says
I didn't know.
specifically that a member can ask for something to be added to the agenda. I asked for that prior to the agenda published. It was not there. And then when I asked, I was told it was because the chair said it wasn't going to be on, which I think is absolutely ludicrous, because I was not allowed to vote for a couple of meetings because the bylaws weren't changed. So I guess we needed to have a discussion amongst our board whether we follow our bylaws or we don't.
I think we should have that discussion.
I think there's no discussion about the bylaws.
And I apologize for not putting it on there. I just would imagine that it would be the secretary that would make the decision if they want to take the notes or
Well,
not.
I guess if somebody, if a board member wants to discuss it, there's some level of confusion.
No
And
matter what, we have to put these items on.
And I'm
Oh,
just
we can
offering,
discuss it, absolutely.
I'm just offering it to make it easier on our board members and to make it a situation where they can, instead of trying to focus on figuring out what everybody's saying and then try to interject if and when they can, I just thought it would operate smoothly if we do something like this.
Barry, do you want to take meeting minutes?
I don't think.
Wait, before we go there, I just gotta make this comment, you know, and I'm just gonna say it out. You know, we have two boards here. We have the executive board, which I appreciate all that you've done, but we have this kind of like this shadow board that are making some big decisions, and then we have the board. There are so many times I come to this meeting in which I am not fully aware of what's going on. The executive committee is taking care of it, and I don't want to micromanage, and I think this board has done way too much of that over the time that I've been out here. I just want the information. The executive board can make decisions, but all this communication, I voted for it, but I was even kind of offended about, well, the executive committee is going to work with Caitlin about these things, and this is going to only be it. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm a board
But we
member.
always took it back to the board for approval. We never moved forward without taking it back to the board for approval. And with you bringing up these comments, I think you're making some great points, because I think there's DDA board members that are representing the DDA in other meetings that are not sharing that with the entire DDA board.
And it has been an issue, in my opinion, all through the time that I've been on this board, that people just we're just not communicating. And that communication has been noted repeatedly, and we don't communicate with it. I mean, it's quagmire.
So anyhow, back to the item on the agenda. My personal opinion, I don't think it's for the secretary to decide. I think that's a board decision, because it's how we operate effectively, not only as a board, but individually as the secretary in being part of the discussion. And again, as it's been brought up, seems to be an issue because we're approving 4 months of minutes at this meeting. And I think we can be more effective in getting those out in a timely fashion and take a responsibility off one of our board members that then she can be more effective in discussions during the board.
I would like to clarify, however, that there is one set of minutes, April 10th, that were not completed right after the meeting. All of the others were, and they were submitted. We, however, remember we had a meeting where we tabled everything, and those minutes were available for that meeting. And as I told you before, the minutes for April 10 were late because there were a number of conflicting items we had. And I had to go through the videotapes of that meeting to clarify what exactly was said. All of the other minutes were prepared as needed, as required before the next meeting.
Is there a cost?
There's no cost. And we're gonna rotate it through amongst our staff, depending on, current workloads.
I don't see what the big deal is. If there's no cost, if I were secretary, I'm not sure that would want to be my focus, is recording. So I can't speak
It
for.
really takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I can't speak for T or Barry, but I don't see what the big deal is.
Someone
Probably
can make
should.
a
I
motion.
will say that the bylaws just, I've got the bylaws in front of me, it does say the board may appoint a secretary who shall maintain custody of the official seal and of records, documents, books, and other papers not required to be maintained by the executive director. Secretary shall attend meetings of the board and keep a record of the proceedings and shall perform such duties delegated by the board.
Right.
So
we need to make a
precluding
motion.
it. That's what I'm hearing, there's nothing precluding it.
Right.
Exactly.
So
We approved, we approved minutes.
Someone can make a motion.
I'll make that motion.
support it.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda, Tyler approached me about a week ago with a letter that the entire board did not receive because I thought it would be a closed session. And I asked Tyler to attend so he can be the one that speaks on this because there are board members that are talking about this already, that it's not the accurate information that Tyler reached out to and talked to me about. So, Tyler?
Can I make a comment? My concern is that the city attorney offered an opinion that this should be, or could legally be discussed in closed session. Is that correct, Caitlin?
I thought transaction meant both parties.
I might go up as an attorney first.
I think we'd have Tom speak before I do.
Okay.
That was my only question. My only concern is,
Yes.
I just want to make sure it's appropriate and the other party's comfortable in discussing this in an open session. That's my concern.
I feel the
I would
same
say,
way.
you know, it's difficult to say that a transaction isn't a purchase. Are you following me?
Yeah.
That's really a real estate transaction.
And especially there is a letter. Is that letter now going to be
I think we should,
public information?
do you want it on this, what do you want to do?
So I can, and thank you for a second. So good morning, thank you for your time. My name is Thomas St. Dennis, I'm an attorney who's well representing the Little River Band of Iowa Indians Economic Development Corporation. I gotta tell you, I'm excited in some ways about what I've heard today, I'm a little concerned in other ways. Frankly, we don't normally put our contractual items out in public. You might at some point, but I'd be a little concerned. I can say this, we've been working for over a year. Chamber has been an incredible resource to help us to get to this point. We do have developers lined up to help with a transformational project for downtown, but other than that, I just don't know.
Can I just ask a question here? This is about a contract.
That's
A
correct.
contract that you're not going to share with us, but I think if it's contract issues, how can we get this to be closed?
Well, here's what I would,
Contract issues get
Well,
closed.
this is from the state's handbook for open meetings, and one of the allowable is to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time an option to purchase a lease or real property is obtained. That's the only one that talks about
property.
Isn't there something about negotiations for purchase and sale of properties?
That's the one, purchase, not sale.
But that's, he's talking negotiations, and that may be different, and we aren't talking about approving in
This
this
is from the
meeting.
handbook, it's not actual text.
Trying to get
Now, the
What
one,
section is
the
Would you be
one
more
that
comfortable
generally gets
just
used
postponing that
potentially in a
for one more month?
situation like this, if our legal
And then-
counsel has given us an opinion, whatever that is, that's protected by client attorney privilege, that the topic of that can be then discussed in a closed session. We do not have a legal opinion from George.
Why don't you ask your question again?
So my question, would you be more comfortable for us to seek legal opinion from the city's attorney, or if we decide to hire an attorney, and bring this back to the agenda next month?
Here's,
I think that he should answer the question.
that's fine, but then I want to.
I think you guys need to be comfortable, so whatever case that you have, we're going to work with that. I will tell you, this is pretty time sensitive. We have been working for over a year on this, but I think you all need to be comfortable.
And that's the question I was going to ask, is it time sensitive? And it is. What I would suggest is that, and I don't think we need to contract with another attorney. We reach out to the city attorney, give him as much information as we can on the intent of the closed session, and see if it is allowable. And then, let's have a special meeting next week.
Yeah, I just keep coming back to if there's any way that we are going to any way be involved in some sort of contract possibility with whatever the project is, which could be part of what Caitlin reaches out to the chamber for, that can go in closed session.
Right. But I think that's a specific question, and hopefully Tom or Tyler can get a little bit more specific, maybe just share it directly with George so you have that confidentiality, and find out, get an opinion, can we take it into closed session? And if we can, have the city attorney put it in writing, his rationale, his opinion, and then if we are able to go to closed session, let's meet next week.
So Caitlin, can you, and if you're comfortable with this, to move forward with asking George Saylor if this can be moved to closed session, or if it has to be in the Open Meetings Act? Legal opinion definitely written, and then once we get the legal opinion, we can call a special meeting.
I just want to make sure that Caitlin has enough specific information as to the intended discussion, so George can render an informed opinion, and that may require him to reach out to Tom to discuss it.
I don't see why that would be an issue, would it?
Right now, all we have is a letter of interest or intent.
Has this project been talked about in other open meetings? Because
I'm aware of it.
But I think the nature of the project is we are one of the few public entities that own property that is impacted the same way. So,
are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, again, we want you comfortable, so you're comfortable, that would make us feel good about carrying going forward.
For next week.
We don't know how long it's going to take George to get back with everything.
but it's not going to take.
It soon take.
Well, I guess
More
that's
than
up
a
George, ASAP.
Yeah. I think we can plan a date, and then George will work to that date.
Yeah.
Okay, so, sure.
I heard mention of
Good question.
I do want to thank the DDA. We're very pleased. Tyler has been a huge asset, and I believe that, again, we talk about collaboration and working together. The fact that he's working with us at this point and we can work together, this could be very transformational. So I think we'd be excited about this.
And we will put plans.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. Thank
He has my contact information.
Pardon me?
Tyler has my contact.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Was there a deed? I didn't write down.
Discussion of replacing the committee chairs.
Actually, it's the committees themselves.
Is this something that the board wants to discuss today, bring back next month?
It sounds like only one got signed, so. One can
Or the,
I mean, I do think that we need to talk about the committees and reevaluate, but is there, do you think that we have to do it?
I think we could table it till the next meeting.
I think that might be appropriate based on,
Okay.
Was that in the form of a motion?
Sure.
and I seconded it.
Okay.
Any more discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so now we have the action to the consideration of going into closed session only for Project Bloom.
We maybe want to move public comment before that, just because no one's going to be left.
Is there anybody
All right, I move to go to closed session.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Any opposed?
We go back,
Sorry I'm being parliamentary in here, but that motion really should say who is attending the closed session, because Caitlin, unless we say she's not attending.
So add it.
Okay, so the motion was
Thank you, Barry.
going to a closed session for all members, board members, and the executive director.
And I will also second that.
Thank you.
I know, it's freezing in here. Can I make a motion?
Are you?
We're missing T.
Yeah, he said he had to run to the
Well, so do I.
bathroom. Is he still
10 to
taking
11.
meeting minutes?
I think,
Yes, for the rest of this meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Hope so.
Okay.
I mean,
You decided?
to continue moving on, I can take the meeting minutes.
all right, I'd like to make a motion, we go into open session. Support.
I think that's
Oh, okay.
Aye.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay. I'll let.
Make the motion that we authorize Caitlin to negotiate on the parcel.
I will second that.
I have the word too.
we have discussion.
But give me 1 second.
Okay, sorry.
And motion second.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
I would just offer that maybe we amend the motion to just, instead of specifying the exact parcel, just property, property in
Yeah.
downtown district.
Okay, good, very good.
I will second that.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So, I know, that's what I'm trying to figure out, where are we? So there's,
I think we're in old business, aren't we?
Board member comments.
so there is, I think we went all through new business, there is no old business. We moved public comment up, there wasn't any, and now this is time for, we added to the agenda, how did you word that, T?
Just
Board member comments. I just like to see a couple things about not including that agenda item was no dig at youth ed. I just thought it would be up to the secretary if they wanted to take meeting minutes or not.
Yeah.
So that was not a ludicrous intentional act.
That's fine.
And then second of all, I see that there's some issues with board members that are representing two organizations that are speaking out on projects and representing the DDA, but they didn't get the information from the DDA. They got it from another organization. And I would just ask that nobody does that.
How are those, I guess I'll just generally ask, how's that? Because right now, we have someone from the county, and we also have someone from the city. So is that what we're talking? And not being accusatory, let's still be accusatory, but rather say, you know, is it easy to separate yourself from where you're at, in other words, or how would that process normally be handled? Because that's probably not very typical of many boards, right?
Well, I think that, yeah, I think it's typical in boards. We have more than one organization, but I think that in my experiences of what I've known, I make it very clear that I have on a county commissioner hat or a DDA, just like I did in this conversation here today. So if I'm privileged to information and know information, which I know more way beyond this one project, I'm not sharing that because it's part of the commission.
The only reason why I bring it up is because, and this is the exact example.
That was one of my questions, if we have specifics,
Yes.
that's fine.
Tyler came to me as the DDA board chair and talked to me about a project. That was, I thought, had to go into closed session, that we're now going to get the legal opinion. That project has been talked about outside of this board with the thought, or with the intention of representing the DDA. And the details that were shared were not consistent at all with what Tyler told me. So this causes a conflict with us.
What specifically did I do?
I think that's.
So what, hey, I just want to clarify. So what happens is that we had somebody that was saying X, Y, and Z. Tyler was saying A, B, and C. And then it creates confusion. And the project wasn't even discussed yet.
There are several pieces on this. One is that this has been a public thing for, truly, if you do not see the people from Chicago walking up and down the streets, you gotta be blind. City was
I know
involved.
nothing about
Yeah,
this.
and I just asked him if it was an open meeting.
Everybody's involved in this
do you know
stuff,
about
so
it?
it's been
I know
going
nothing.
on, it's going on for months. The other piece of this is that it did come up in our TIF meeting, in which it was brought up by an outside, I guess by our contract person. And the comment that was made in the TIF meeting is, why isn't Caitlin involved in this? It is in the DDA that people are walking up and down, looking at all of our properties and blah, blah, blah.
Caitlin is involved in it.
At the time, Caitlin said she was not involved in it.
Because I just officially got the letter a week ago.
And the question was to Caitlin,
So-
why aren't you involved? Then, as a commissioner, and as a DDA, I went right to the president and said, why aren't you representing the DDA? Why isn't the DDA here? What's going on here? Because I didn't know the project stuff. So, you know, again, trying to make sure that the DDA is at the table. When obviously the county was at, I mean, I can't talk for the city, but the county was at the table. So I saw a problem, and I made that pretty clear.
Well, just to back up, when Tom was the interim director, he was, I approached him about being involved in our discussions with that couple from Alabama and also on this project in his role. So, I mean, he was fully engaged and aware. And I don't know where that, why the mantle wasn't handed off to Caitlin, I don't know. But Tom was involved early on.
I guess my entire.
And Tom described it a bit differently. because I
Tom
was-
Kaminsky.
Yeah.
I guess my point of bringing it up is that we have to be very clear when we're out at other meetings who we're representing. Because it causes confusion. It causes confusion here. And there, already with this project, there has been issues, which I don't want to have any issues with this project that Tom and Tyler approached us with. They requested it to be in a timely manner. I think that we can do that and go from there.
Well, if there's something specifically you were aware of, you can bring it on. I just need to know if,
This is all part of this whole thing in this group that I brought up earlier. It's like, you know, I don't know what's going on. You know, I'm hearing from outside here, and then I'm involved in this, and then I'm involved in this, and it's like, it'd be nice if people are being approached or talked to about major projects within the DDA. Somehow that communication has to get to all of us as a group.
It did today. And we can't talk about it until.
Yeah, totally, because there's a letter and other stuff that's going on. I don't know all this stuff, so can't, yeah.
I've got a couple of comments. One is Project Rising Tide, one of the 4 areas is board training. I'm waiting for that to come out because we need some board training, because part of board training is about how you handle these issues. Not necessarily the specifics of this case, but it's how we act as board members. And I haven't heard much of that initiative, so I don't, do you know
That's,
where that's
well, I'll tell you what I do know, it was the 4th.
we need that,
It was the
especially
4th.
this board.
That was the 4th on the list. And I don't believe I'm talking out of school here, but John Michelangelo was going to be the lead on the board training. Unfortunately, I think that email that he sent might have created some issues because he took shots at the city and he took shots at the chamber, in my mind, very unwarranted and ill-informed.
I thought you took shots.
I thought it was all of us.
It was all of us.
Yes.
I took exception to a couple of them. The DDA, you know, now, I don't think that sets a good atmosphere for him to lead board discussion or training on how boards are gonna work when he's gonna make those kind of comments. So we might have to, Rising Tide might have to look for somebody else to do that. I don't disagree we need board training in the worst way, but I didn't know at the time when I read the email that he was the one. And it's gonna be hard pressed for him to resurrect his credibility.
My second comment, and I'm basically going to repeat what I repeated or said at a city council work session. We need to fix our trust issues. And I don't know if that's beers at TJ's on Friday nights, small beers, but we need to spend more time building a team here as opposed to trying to tear us apart. And I don't know how we get there, but it there's so many things that happened in today's meeting that are just warning flags, and we've got to figure out a way of getting past that.
I fully agree, and I think Karen brought it up, is that earlier when she talked about two boards and no, lack of communication and how that starts alienating. And I think we just need to work on our communication skills and, and then
Going back to the board training, I do have a question that I do not know the answer to. When I was approached with Tyler with the letter, it goes on the agenda as closed session. Does the entire board get to see that letter before we go into closed session? Because I don't know the answer to that, and that's why you guys are not aware of what he's talking about, because I didn't send it out to the entire board because it's a closed session. So I don't know if everybody should have had that letter.
no, you shouldn't, because if you throw it out
Okay,
with
so
the
that
packet,
answers
it's a part
that
of it. It's a
question.
part of it.
It could be part of the packet.
It's part of the record, it's open to the public. And again, that comes back to what Barry brought up, we got to trust that if it's on the agenda, that there's a reason for it to be on the agenda, and it's going to be addressed in the closed session.
But there could have been a communication either by your director or the board chair to say, we have received a letter, blah, blah, blah. We'll have further discussion. I mean, it's.
Well, that's on the agenda.
Well, I think what Karen was saying, that she, knowing that there was a letter,
So Thad, do you think that everybody should have received that letter?
Not,
You can't.
not as
Okay,
part of the
so-
packet. And even if you send it out beforehand in an email, that's still a public record.
So that can't happen what you're asking.
I'm
But-
not asking for details, but the board should be informed. Like, when Tom would do this at the county level, we would have a statement from Tom that we would be prepared for, and that way allow us as individuals to be able to kind of ask the question, do I need to prepare for this? What do I need to know about this?
The other thing too is that, with that, we all have the opportunity to contact Caitlin and say, what is this? And have a one-on-one discussion with Caitlin, which I sent her an email with a couple of issues I had with the agenda, and she attended to it. So I think we always have that opportunity that if there's something here in closed session that we're wondering, go to Caitlin, find out, because hopefully Caitlin's gonna have that information. And then we bring it to that's one way to do it.
That's a very good suggestion, because then everybody can take action, and they don't have to wait to find out through some rumor mill, right?
I'm gonna say on this specific item, the letter is the only communication I've had on this project. I have not participated in it. Have been part of any conversations or been invited to be in some sort of discussion, so being in the community, you probably do know more about the specific item.
But
than I
Karen,
should.
to your point, if you were able to go to Caitlin and say, what is this? And she could say, well, I got this letter, and we're gonna discuss it, would that be sufficient? Okay. So maybe that's the way we address it moving forward.
And I think Karen's other point was important too, that Caitlin wasn't involved at all, but yet a lot of other discussions are going on, and that's inappropriate, and some problems we've had before with the DDA, that we were the last to
I don't know all
know.
the details, but I think it was 2 months ago at design, we talked about this, and, I think after that meeting, you approached Stacy to try to, get involved, and it sounds like nothing really happened between then until we then received the letter, so I'm not sure why we weren't more successful in getting engaged, because at least at the design, we saw this coming and knew that we needed not to get steamrolled by it, but
And really, how do we do a better job, I think, generally, because I think of rising tides sometimes. I mean, today when she was talking, even though we'd all seen the brand, are you kind of following me? Sometimes a process, in other words, I'd like to see, just like what we talked about, what's the city's, we're part of that organization, so are they gonna adapt it? Because why would we take action until we knew that? Does that make any sense? And so, that was a little awkward to me, kind of what happened today, because we do want to be more in alignment with the city. And so, we have to be concerned about those things. I think process is really important, so that people have good communication.
And Lizette did come to me and tell me that she was going to say this, and I said, you know, I thought that there was some concerns on the approach, because, just reiterating what you said. But I think, I mean, I agree with both of you that there has to be the better communication and.
Just as an agenda note, is it worth having, would you be willing or interested in having one of our committee reports, just reporting what is being discussed at city council meetings?
Okay. We'll see.
I could add that to the conversation.
Might be boring.
Keep
Well, maybe
operating.
something that you
Well, I
might
guess
have
that's
thought.
related to the DDA.
Well,
Or-
I don't, you know, and that's the other thing that, I forgot to bring it up, but one of the things that I would like to do is offer Caitlin the opportunity to attend at least one of our city staff meetings a month, and possibly two, to help get her, would be a two-way communication. Then our senior staff and department directors would understand what's going on in the DDA, and then she would be more in tune to what's going on in the greater community outside the DDA. So I think it's a way to increase the communications, two-way communications.
I think it's a good idea, just not at this point yet. She's still 2-3 months in, and then she has these specific goals. She already has lots of meetings to attend, but maybe after 6 months to start then attending those meetings and adding that onto her responsibilities.
I think it's important that she attends the meeting that it's talking about, because that's when you learn quick. She needs to get quickly a lot of information about what's going on in the city. So I think that's very good.
And I'm not suggesting she attend every one,
Every
although
one,
there will be
yeah.
conflicts,
Okay.
but we meet every Tuesday morning at 8:30. I'll leave it up to you when you want to show up.
Well, that works, that way she has the flexibility.
Related to that is communication at the various commission levels. So I know that the planning commission has on their standard agenda a update from the DDA director. The HTC, I don't think it's that formalized, but we're not getting any information from those groups. What is the planning commission doing as it relates to things? What is HTC doing? Because there's a huge overlap between that. So they're expecting us to give them information, but we're not receiving anything back. And somehow that, we have to figure out that process too.
Isn't there a leadership group that meets once a month that is all of these? Yeah.
Well,
That's the level above.
Yeah.
That's
It
city.
really is.
Oh.
If you're, you know,
Not within the city.
if you're interested
Oh.
in receiving information on, you know, from the planning commission and HTC, I would suggest we reach out to Rob Carson, because the city contracts with the county planning department for planning and zoning, and they're the city's liaison to both of those boards. I mean, and you can ask them to come in and just, what's new and exciting?
So I mean.
Even a periodic report.
Right, I mean.
Yeah, maybe it's quarterly or whatever.
Well, and I think too, on Rob's part, I know Rob would do whatever, but especially when there's some major thoughts of what could be going on the north side that will directly impact Washington Street. Yeah, yeah. So I think those would be good to have in your.
Would be a quarterly report, would that be sufficient? Whether a written report that we can include in the packet?
No, I mean, I'm thinking monthly, I mean, because we're expecting to show up monthly for planning. You Caitlin's expected to be each planning meeting.
Who holds out that expectation?
It's on the agenda.
To
There's
do a
on the
report.
planning agenda is
To do
update
a
for the
report?
DDA. Update for the DDA, it's
Well,
on
I
there.
think that's because our past executive directors have attended those meetings. Now, we haven't directed Caitlin to do that
Right,
yet, but we
right.
need to, as she begins to talk to business owners and has more involvement in economic development or conversation, she needs to be familiar with how they view those, you know.
Caitlin and I
Historic
did talk
requirements, et
about
cetera.
her attending the historic district and planning commission.
Okay.
That was just recently, so I don't think you've started attending yet. But I think Barry has a good point. We're asked a lot to go to other organizations and report on what we're doing. We don't ask anybody to come here.
And I'll, wind back the clock 10 years ago, but as part of our standing agenda was a chamber update, was a CBB update, and we were expecting those organizations to fill us in. That has changed, obviously, over time. So there used to be more of that going on than there is now.
That might help with communication and collaboration too, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it's a huge time commitment, especially when you've got 3-hour meetings to.
We also used to
five
have
different
consent
places.
agendas for the committees. I mean, if meeting minutes are out from the committees, we all should be able to read those meeting minutes before the DDA board meeting and have a consent agenda. But I think that we changed that because, I think we changed it, I don't know, 6-7 months ago because there were some issues, or not issues, but big projects that these committees were working on that did need more discussion, especially since the design and the business development committee is doing so much. But we can also look at going back to consent agendas for the committees and then inviting the chamber and the CBB in.
I totally agree that if we can make use of the consent agenda, because we're 3 hours and 50 minutes into a meeting.
Yeah,
It's, we don't, I don't think we need to be here now.
I don't
Conduct
either.
any business.
I do
So,
not either.
you know, and I would offer that Caitlin could